Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
The song today is on page 15. By the Lord
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Maheti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So, hope you have had a great Thanksgiving. And as we meet this weekend of the Thanksgiving weekend, even as we are just through and are still celebrating one of the probably a major celebrations and holidays in the annual calendar, as we often do almost every year, it's helpful to recognize the spirit that has made this event such a big event in our celebrations. So it's, although most of us are familiar with the history of Thanksgiving, I would very briefly like to refresh our memories about it and then see how this event can be not only an occasion for external celebrations, but also internal celebration. First, a very brief history. The pilgrims who sailed aboard the Mayflower were originally members of the English Separatist Church, which is a Puritan sect. They had earlier fled their home in England and sailed to Holland, the Netherlands, to escape religious persecution. There they enjoyed more religious tolerance, but they eventually became disenchanted with the Dutch way of life, thinking it ungodly. Some people think it's ungodly even today. Seeking a better life, the separatists negotiated with a London stock company to finance a pilgrimage to America. Most of those making the trip aboard the Mayflower were non-separatists, but were hired to protect the company's interests. Only about 1/3 of the original colonists were separatists. The pilgrims set aground at Plymouth Rock on December 11, 1620. Their first winter was devastating. At the beginning of the following fall, they had lost 46 of the original 102 who sailed on the Mayflower. But the harvest of 1621 was a bountiful one, and the remaining colonists decided to celebrate with a feast, including 91 Native Americans who had helped the pilgrims survive their first year. It is believed that the pilgrims would not have made it through the year without the help of the natives. The feast was more of a traditional English harvest festival than a true Thanksgiving observance. It lasted for 3 days. Governor William Bradford sent 4 men fowling after wild ducks and geese. It is not certain that wild turkey was part of their feast. However, it is certain they had venison. The term turkey was used by the pilgrims to mean any sort of wild fowl. Another modern staple at almost every Thanksgiving table is pumpkin pie, but it is unlikely that the first feast included that treat. The supply of flour had been long diminished, so there was no bread or pastries of any kind. However, they did eat boiled pumpkin, and they produced a type of fried bread from their corn crop. There was also no milk, cider, potatoes, or butter. There was no domestic cattle for dairy products, and the newly discovered potato was still considered by many Europeans to be poisonous. But the feast did include fish, berries, watercress, lobster, dried fruit, clams, venison, and plums. This Thanksgiving feast was not repeated the following year, but in 1623, during a severe drought, the pilgrims gathered in a prayer service praying for rain. When a long, steady rain followed the very next day, Governor Bradford proclaimed another day of Thanksgiving, again inviting their Indian friends. It was not until the June of 1676 that another day of Thanksgiving was proclaimed. On June 20th, 1676, the Governing Council of Charlestown, Massachusetts, held a meeting to determine how best to express thanks for the good fortune that had seen their community securely established. By unanimous vote, they instructed Edward Rawson, the clerk, to proclaim June 29th as a day of thanksgiving. It is notable that this Thanksgiving celebration probably did not include the Native Americans, as the celebration was meant partly to be in recognition of the colonists' recent victory over the heathen natives. So already the historical origin is kind of gradually getting modified over time, as you can see. October 1777 marked the first time that all 13 colonies joined in a Thanksgiving celebration. It also commemorated the patriotic victory over the British at Saratoga, but it was a one-time affair. George Washington proclaimed a National Day of Thanksgiving in 1789, although some were opposed to it. There were discord among the colonies, many feeling the hardships of a few pilgrims did not warrant a national holiday. And later, President Thomas Jefferson scoffed at the idea of having a day of Thanksgiving. It was Sarah Josepha Hale, a magazine editor, whose efforts eventually led to what we recognize today as Thanksgiving. Hale wrote many editorials championing her cause in a Boston Ladies magazine and later in Godey's Ladies book. Finally, after a 40-year campaign of writing editorials and letters to governors and presidents, Hale's obsession became a reality when in 1683, President Lincoln proclaimed the last Thursday in November as a National Day of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was proclaimed by every president after Lincoln. The date was changed a couple of times, most recently by Franklin Roosevelt, who set it up 1 week to the next to last Thursday in order to create a longer Christmas shopping season. Public uproar against this decision caused the president to move Thanksgiving back to its original date 2 years later. And in 1941, Thanksgiving was finally sanctioned by Congress as a legal holiday as the fourth Thursday in November. So this is just a very brief legal background of the festival. And even as we, as I said, look a little bit deeper beyond the celebrations and an opportunity for the family and friends to come together on this occasion, Thanksgiving or giving thanks is an expression of gratitude, and that's how today's title of today's topic is gratitude. Now, expressing one's gratitude to others is much older than a formal observance of this festival, of the celebration of Thanksgiving. If we look back at our life, the different places that we have visited, the different people we have met, and especially years ago, and we think about all of that in the mind and say, what has remained with us today? And really, other than memories, nothing much. The places you have been to, the people you have met. Many of the places that we grew up in, especially in our childhood, those places have changed. Many people we have known in our lives have either moved on or passed away. Even the number of those with whom we have shared memories is dwindling. And as we grow older, it's not unusual, but it's inevitable that even we tend to lose many of our contemporaries. So many of the things which may not have been recorded, which just remain in memories, as people pass away, those memories tend to vanish. And then the memories that we hold of the earlier days, when we pass away, those will go away too, unless, of course, you have written a book or an editorial or something like that. And so every time this Thanksgiving comes, these are the kind of thoughts that come to my mind, and I'm sure in the minds of many people. I was thinking about many of the friends that I met in my childhood, some of the teachers I had when I was young, and I realized a great many of them are no more. So besides the memory, sure, memories remain with us, but even memories fade away as we get older, unless, of course, we find occasions to keep on refreshing the memories of the past. Now, if we have harvested those memories well, properly, intelligently, then the only thing that remains besides those memories is a heart filled with gratitude. What each of us is today, every one of us, is a result of everything that we have learned, everything that we have experienced in our own past. The places we have been to, the people we have met, our successes, our various failures, our joys, our sorrows, have all added up and contributed for us being who we are today. So every one of us as a person, as an individual, is a resultant of the influences we have had in our lives, the things that we have achieved, the things that we have not achieved. Everything has kind of added up, and it's now the living embodiment of it is every one of us. Now we may not have become perfect yet, but we still live with the hope and love in our hearts, and for that we can be truly grateful. A gratitude for life has brought us a heart filled with peace, a heart filled with confidence in our future and the future of the world in which we live. Now, for those of us who live with a spiritual ideal, it is natural to express our gratitude towards God. And one way that expression manifests in our lives is through the practice of prayer and through worship. Things may have come to us from various sources around us, from family, friends, and so on. But as spiritual seekers, we see that the original source of everything that we have received has come from God, through grace, through guidance, through wisdom, through protection. So worship or puja can be seen as a very concrete way of expressing gratitude. Sometimes we see that these three kind of basic practices of prayer, worship, and meditation can be seen collectively. Prayer can be seen as a movement from God towards us. When we need something, when we want something, we pray. And when we say the prayer is answered, something is coming from a divine source towards us. And when we receive in whatever form the things that we have been praying for, then it's natural for the heart to feel grateful. And that gratitude that the heart feels is expressed through worship. So worship can be seen as an act of giving. It's a movement from the devotee toward God. And that's why, although there is not one universal form of worship, there are many ways worship is performed. But probably one of the common ingredients of worship, no matter in which way or what ritual that worship is performed, is an act of giving. In the puja that we have at the Vedanta centers, you will have seen that there is offering of flowers, we give incense, there is a sandal paste, there is fruits, food. So we give, and giving can come in a real sense only with a heart filled with gratitude. And it's this, a simultaneous practice of prayer and worship taken together, a movement from God to us and movement from us to God. These are the two practices, prayer and worship, which bring these two entities together, closer and closer. And the closer they come, then meditation becomes more easy. Meditation becomes a more fruitful, meaningful practice. Which is why oftentimes it is helpful to begin with prayer, have some role in our lives for worship, because these are excellent preparatory practices for meditation. Straight away jumping into meditation sometimes becomes difficult, but a mind that is prepared and nourished through a very vigorous practice of prayer and worship finds it easier to meditate. Now, I said that puja or worship is an act of giving to God. Now, what can we give to God? If everything has come from God, what can we give to God which is not already God's? So there isn't really anything that you can give which is your own, because really we ourselves don't belong to ourselves. There is in India, among the different ways God is worshipped, one of the pujas that is held in India is called Ganga Puja. It's a worship of the Ganges river. The river Ganga is considered very sacred, and so there is a day assigned in the annual festival calendar for the worship of Ganges. Now, the Ganges water is considered so pure. For all worships, the Ganges water is used for puja. Now, how do you worship the Ganges? What water will you use to worship the Ganges river? And so they say, well, you use the Ganges water in order to worship Ganges. In other words, if we are making any offering to God, what we are giving to God already belongs to God. It's a little bit like as little children, we want to give a birthday gift to dad or mom. From where are we going to get the money to get the gift? So usually it's a dad or mom who gives us money. We go and buy a gift and say, Mom, this is a gift for you. But really we are giving them in a way which is already theirs. That's exactly how any kind of offering to God is. So it's not so much what you give, but how it is given that makes the difference. In the beginning, worship as a spiritual discipline may remain separate, different from our day-to-day work. So oftentimes when someone asks us a question, what do you do? How we interpret that question is really, well, what job do you do? But what do you do really means, really we do hundreds of things in life. But when you say how do you do or what do you do really means, and so sometimes if someone is jobless, they say, well, I'm not doing anything right now. Of course not. Of course, we are doing a lot of things. So work, when the word work is used in oftentimes in Vedanta, it's not just in the sense of what job you do. Work really means any activity. So any kind of activity is work. What often happens in our lives is that a kind of a barrier or a compartment or a wall exists. So as spiritual seekers, there are kind of spiritual things that we do. So prayer, worship, meditation is a part of our spiritual life, and we qualify the word life with the adjective spiritual because we feel I have other things to do in life also. So let's say secular. So there are secular things to be attended to, and then there are the spiritual things. And the format that has kind of evolved for good reason about separation of the state and church. So there is a secular part of life and there is a religious or spiritual part. Now all that is probably good and necessary in social life, this kind of a separation and distinction. But just because it's inevitable and necessary in the external life, should that also remain in the internal life? And that's the challenge. Because if I separate my secular life from my spiritual life, then although not in a very in a strictly psychological terms, it is a kind of a split personality that we have in a spiritual sense. Because we then say, well, this is something spiritual and this is something secular. So in the beginning, our work and our worship might remain as two distinct things. One of the things that we learn from the life of Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swamiji, and especially Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga, is that this distinction between work and worship needs to disappear. And one way of doing that is not only doing worship as worship, but doing even work as worship. And if you're not careful, what would be terrible if even our worship becomes work? Yes, and sometimes in the beginning, we may start doing these spiritual practices with great enthusiasm. But over time, if we don't do it consciously, if we don't keep that fire of our seeking after the divine kind of awake, over time, even these things can become mechanical. These things can become another chore to be completed. Oh, I've got to finish my meditation. Oh, I've got this very urgent thing to do. Oh, but I've got to finish this meditation. So it just becomes like one more chore to be completed. So there is a real danger of even prayer, worship, meditation becoming another work. Now, what as spiritual seekers we need to do is even the work that we do, can we try to do it as a form of worship? Can we transform work as a yoga? And that's what karma yoga really means. What it would mean is, if it's true that the divine is present everywhere and in everyone, can we make a conscious effort to remember that and live with that awareness in the heart? So, as a physician, for instance, when I'm attending to my patients, can I see, well, here is the divine being come to me in the form of a patient. And if I treat this divine being properly, then this is a form of worship, that as a physician or as a surgeon, the skills and knowledge that have come to me through God's grace, I'm employing it in the best possible way by looking upon every person I encounter as God come to me in that form to help me practice my skills. Same thing with regard to teachers or lawyers, or no matter what are the different works that we do in life, or to earn a livelihood, or even at home as a parent. Don't tell your children that you see them as gods, but in your heart, it's good to remember, well, God has come to me in this form. And sometimes, if God in the form of your child is being naughty, if you scold that God in the form of your child, that's the form of worship that naughty God needs at that time. So it doesn't mean that worship means you always kind of give them and load them with sweets and video games. So depending on the kind of situation, it's possible. It's possible to be angry. It's possible to even reprimand someone with that love in your heart. And if it's done in that way, you won't regret it later. Oftentimes, when you scold your students or your children or your friends, or you're upset, oftentimes we regret later and then feel, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done it. There's something wrong in the way it was done. But sometimes, even if you are upset or angry, but you scold someone, but you do it with a heart filled with love, with a heart meant not to just vent your own frustration or anger, but to truly help that person, then that kind of anger would not leave that residue of guilt or frustration afterward. No matter how much we succeed in doing our work as worship, one way we can express our awareness of the presence of God in everyone is through a very conscious practice of gratitude. Something that we all know, but something that we also need to remember ourselves often, is that none of us is really self-made. Although we might like to see ourselves as, oh, I have done everything on my own, there's nothing in life that anyone can do on their own. So we need to consciously remember and practice gratitude to those who raised us up, our parents, our family members, gratitude to our teachers, to our friends, gratitude to fellow members of the community of which we are a part, gratitude to nature for giving us air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat. If this spirit of gratitude would fill our hearts, many of the problems that we face today, we might be able to overcome. Even the problem with, for instance, climate change and global warming and all of that. The reason there is such insensitivity to the needs of the planet is because we have forgotten the great value of gratitude. As they say, the earth, the planet on which we live, has plenty to meet all of our needs, but not enough to fill our greed. So that's the beauty of life as it is, that it is self-sustaining in many ways. But because of our unlimited greed, we find the kind of mess that exists today in many aspects of life. The practice of gratitude also encourages us to take care of one another. We know that a growing plant needs water, nourishment, and when the plant grows up and flowers begin to bloom, well, it will be a while till spring arrives now, but once the flower begins to bloom, it fills our heart with joy. The same is true with people in our lives. Every person in our own little world, our own little bubble in which generally our lives are led, our family, our members, every friend, every family member is like a plant. And we need to take care of every one of them. We can try to become good gardeners. Now, well, in this kind of weather, this isn't much a good time to go and do gardening. So if we cannot do gardening outside, there's plenty of opportunity to do gardening inside. And there are plenty of plants around. Look upon every member of your family as a plant that needs nourishment. And if the plants in the garden outside would need water, sunshine, the plants in our family, among our friends, would need love, understanding, friendship. The more we are able to give these to the plants around us, we will see that flowers will begin to bloom. And the flowers would be the smile, the contentment that you see on the faces of people around you. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking, well, I just want to be happy. But what we don't often remember, that I cannot be happy if the people around me are miserable. I cannot be happy if the people around me are grumpy. I cannot be happy if people around me are upset. So even from a purely utilitarian standards, I need to make people around me happy because I want to be happy. It would be really impossible to experience happiness when everyone around you is truly upset. Having said that, we also need to see from a spiritual standpoint. I said from a utilitarian standpoint, at least for your own happiness, try to make others happy. That might be a kind of a more, a rather a cheap way of putting it. But I think from a spiritual standpoint, we need to give up what Swami Vivekananda often called sanctified shopkeeping. And that is to make others happy because I want to be happy might be a good strategy, but that's not a very spiritual way to go about it. A true spiritual evolution would mean that I want to make everyone happy without expecting anything in return. Because sanctified shopkeeping is a sense, it's business. Well, I want to make you happy because you make me happy. The moment you stop making me happy, I'm not going to make any effort to make you happy. In fact, if you make me miserable, I'll try to make you even more miserable. Now that's shopkeeping, that's barter. That's like you do this to me and I do this to you. But a spiritual attitude would be, I'll make an effort. Now, it's not just it's like this. We need to make effort to make people around us happy, not as a form of strategy. It's not some kind of a trick. Can we transform ourselves in such a way that bringing joy and happiness to people around us becomes our second nature? It's not something that we have to do consciously. It's not something that I need to say, I want to make people happy. In the beginning, that might be a good motivation. But the ultimate goal is, can my very presence bring happiness to people? It's like one might say, well, every morning when we see the sun rise, if the sun could think or speak, probably sun can, we don't know. But does the sun come and say, let me now bring light to the world, or let me bring heat to this planet? But as far as we can see from our standpoint, that's just the nature of the sun. What is the sun doing to bring us light and heat? Nothing. The sun is just being the sun. If the sun stops being the sun, like if the sun cools down and just becomes one dark, just mass of matter, well, then it won't be the sun anymore. So the sun just remains a sun, and therefore giving heat and light becomes its own nature. Exactly in the same way. We don't have to do something ultimately to make people happy. Can we just be that unending source of happiness, contentment, and joy, so that it will emanate from us as spontaneously as heat and light emanate from the sun? And the only way this can happen is if my own heart becomes filled with love, filled with peace, filled with contentment, filled with joy, then whatever is filled with, that's what is going to come out. We can, and the reason, and therefore, even loving, sometimes people say, be loving, love others. Now, even loving others cannot be done so much as a strategy or as something that needs to be done, because in order for me to love others, there should be love in my heart. If there is no love in my heart, I can only succeed in just pretending to love others, in making a show of love to others. But that one can see very quickly, the hollowness of that kind of just a show of love, a show of friendship, a show of concern. But if my heart is filled with kindness, filled with love, then I don't have to do anything. It will automatically come out on its own. And that's what I meant by giving up sanctified shopkeeping. In the beginning, we might, and we usually will need to make an effort to be grateful, to help. But if we do it well, if we do it correctly, if we do it as a yoga, then that will become our nature itself. One helpful practice in doing this is to not claim anything as our right. of course, I know about the Bill of Rights and all of that. Uh, most constitutions today, they emphasize so much about rights, our rights. In itself, that's great, except that usually it's not balanced by duties. So alongside the Bill of Rights, if there was a Bill of Duties, I think it would have been great, because rights and duties always go together. If it is the right of someone to receive love and understanding, then it can only be met with the duty of someone to provide that love and understanding. So simply talking about rights without corresponding duties, really, that's the kind of lack of balance that we find today. And so we don't have much control over how these constitutions are framed and what does, and don't waste your time trying to do that. What we can do, at least in our own hearts, in our own personal lives, is make an effort to not claim anything as your right. Because if we do, we oftentimes succeed in just sowing the seeds of anger and frustration. In fact, it's a very helpful practice to remember in our heart that we have already gotten more than we deserved in our life. Now, that's sometimes difficult to do. A lot of people live with this kind of sometimes suppressed anger or disappointment that they deserved much more in life, that life has not been fair to them, that people have not been fair to them, that they are the victims. Now, whether or not this kind of thinking is justified, whether this may be true or not true, what is certainly true is that this kind of thinking does not conduce to our own happiness and contentment. This kind of thinking makes us live helplessly with this kind of self-pity, oftentimes anger, frustration, because oftentimes these are the kind of situations in life we are not able to change just as individuals. And so every moment of our life is just getting wasted. Every moment we are marching towards the inevitable end of our own lives. And if these moments of our lives are spent in just getting angry or frustrated or upset, we are just wasting our own life. It's not helping us in any way, it's not helping the world in any way. In fact, as I said, therefore, it's very helpful, practical, to see that, to believe that there is such thing as justice. There may not be, we may not see that justice so much manifested in external life. Sometimes things really look not fair at all. That's undeniable. When I speak of justice, I mean I take a much larger picture. In the much larger picture, if we believe that there is such a thing as justice, we believe that what I have today is probably what I have deserved. That doesn't mean that things won't get better. It doesn't mean that things won't get worse. What it simply means is just accepting. Again, accepting doesn't mean that I should not strive to improve the situation. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't hope or dream or work harder. So don't misunderstand the way I'm putting it. All that I'm saying is, from a spiritual standpoint, to live with the awareness, to live with that humility, to live with that humility is probably the best word. That humility, that I have received more than I deserved in life. That will help us take responsibility of our own lives and then not blame other factors, outside factors, whether it's people or institutions, for our failures. That gives us control over our own life. There is one saying of a Sufi saint which Sister Nivedita, Vivekananda's Irish disciple, quotes in one of her letters. It's a favorite saying of mine. So this is what it says: "Thy place in life is seeking after thee, so cease thou from seeking after it." It's an amazing insight, sometimes difficult to grasp or accept at first reading, but the more you think about it, it just makes sense. That if, and it's a big if I believe that in overall there is such a thing, and we think of God as an embodiment of justice. We speak about the just God. So if we truly believe that, then we also automatically need to believe that what I am or what I will be or what I hope to achieve in life is already, it's already there for me. No one can take away from me what is truly mine. And what is not mine, what I don't deserve, I will not get, even if I move heaven and earth or heaven and hell, move whatever. We can go to sleep every night with a heart filled with gratitude for everyone and everyone around us. And if we are able to truly do that, we'll wake up every morning to find the world to be a truly wonderful place to live in. In fact, modern research has showed that those who practice gratitude consciously experience greater happiness in life than those who don't. And this has been really tried out. They had two groups of people, and over time, one group was told to every day write in their diary the things that they were grateful for. Every day, it's a kind of a self-reminder. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. And another group, this was a very controlled experiment. Another group was told every day to mention in their diary the things that were unhappy about in their life. Again, that was a kind of a reminder to them of what makes them so grumpy. At the end of a month, they found that the people who had every day mentioned in their diary a line or two about what they are thankful for, what they are grateful for, overall became happier than those who didn't. So let us be grateful for everything in our life, not just the big things, even the little things. It's not about just some miracles happening in our lives, but there are so many tiny miracles that are occurring around us all the time, and which we miss. We are waiting for some big miracle to occur, and we miss these little miracles in our life. When you go for a walk, when you are in the subway, and you see a little child smiling, and that's a miracle. When you see a little child smile, and that smile fills your heart with joy, already a miracle has occurred. Essentially, think about it in a purely kind of a non-poetic way. Essentially, there is this person, a few muscles on that person's head have got stretched, and your heart is filled with joy. I mean, what is the connection? I mean, it is a miracle, but we just take these little miracles for granted, and we miss them. So there is so much to be grateful for these little things that are occurring around us. So let us make this a habit of being grateful, not just at the time of Thanksgiving, but every day, a daily habit. There's a beautiful article that came in the New York Times last week. It's written by Arthur Brooks, called "Choose to be Grateful. It'll make you happier." So try to take a look at that piece, which was beautiful. So let's make it a habit, a conscious habit in the beginning. And over time, if you practice it consciously, it will become your second nature. Every day, try to remind yourself of what you are grateful for. One way of doing it would be, say, at least one person, or two if you can. Find an opportunity every day to at least one or two people, either personally or via email or via Skype or FaceTime or wherever, just to tell them how thankful you are, how grateful you are. And just don't do it again. It's not a trick. It's not a strategy. Just if you try to remind yourself of the things that you can be grateful for, and let someone know. If you find there's no one, stand near your window, look at the sun and say, thank you for being there. Look at the river, look at the trees. All the leaves have fallen. Even then, even then, the tree, just imagine on the onset of winter, if the whole, not just the leaves had fallen, if the tree itself had gone, then when the spring comes, there would be no more leaves, there would be no flowers. In spite of this harsh winter, while all of us are nice and cozy and warm inside our homes, the tree is standing outside there, facing all the storm, facing everything, but waiting patiently. Let the spring come. When the spring comes, I'm going to burst with flowers and leaves and make people happy again. So be grateful for that tree standing outside with no heat, just to make you happy. There's so much to be grateful for, looking at even the tree without its leaves. The world we live today is not a very pretty place, and probably it never was. Think about what's happening, the bombing that occurred in Paris, the killing that occurred in Nigeria, the Boko Haram, the constant, we have kind of become desensitized to all these news that comes about terrorism, bombing, people. Then just remain just a statistic, just the number of people who have died, the number of people who are suffering. And one may begin to wonder, well, where does gratitude come into all this? What are we being grateful for? What is to be thankful about? In order for us to face meaningfully to the challenges in the external world, we need to strengthen ourselves internally. So it's only a heart that is filled with gratitude inside that gives us that inner reserve to deal intelligently with the forces outside. Because if I'm troubled, if I'm angry, if I'm disturbed within, I will not be able to face the external challenges properly. It's only those who have attained that kind of an inner equilibrium, inner balance, who might be, and how many of our leaders who can make these big policy decisions to either improve the situation or make the situation worse? It so much depends on these big leaders, how much of that heart filled with gratitude, filled with love, filled with compassion that they have when they sit together and try to thrash out a solution to a major problem. Now, you and I may not be called to solve these international problems, and they are really major and big. But we, in our own little way, have these little problems to deal with within our small circles, within our family, within our group of friends. If we can handle these little problems properly, correctly, intelligently, then there is some hope for the future of the world. These leaders who are there, they're also just people like you and me. In some way, for some reason, for whatever reason now, they may be holding a position of power. But we need to do what we can in a situation in which God has placed us. If we can do that, we can be hopeful that things will improve. And irrespective of how much things improve outside, we can be completely sure that things can improve within our own hearts if we are able to deal with these internal and external changes in an intelligent way. So let's try to do this. In addition to the pumpkin pie that we have all had, many of us have had, let us try to consciously practice being grateful every day. And if you can do it for a few days, I can guarantee you that you will be even more happy than you are now. So let's begin the practice today, and then when we meet by next Thanksgiving, we can then kind of reassess our happiness index and see whether we have become happy. We really don't even have to wait for 1 full year. You do it even for a month, and you will know for yourself that things have really, it's not magic, it's simple, and it's very tangible. So it's really worth giving a try. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. Next Sunday, we have a guest speaker, Swami Brahmananda of the Vedanta Society of Greater Washington, D.C. will be here, and he will speak next Sunday at the Satsang on the subject Inner Sacrifice, Outer Prayer. On Wednesday, we will meet and continue with our study of the Gita, evening at 7:30. We are studying chapter 12 at present. And on Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. Let's now conclude with a prayer on page 3 of your books. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.